Welcome to Transformation with Martine. Martine Emmons is a transformational life coach who broke free from childhood abuse, sexual trauma, and overcame cancer to become a powerful force of healing and hope for others. Martine describes traumatic events as fierce emotional tsunamis. They can leave impending doom and destructive tidal waves of emotions that hit you when you least expect it. Martine helps her clients dive into the depths of their trauma and pain as she stands fiercely advocating for them to shine a light on those experiences and find the lesson in the pain. She serves as a beacon of hope that guides you to see the strength, lessons, and purpose that can be born from the pain. You can feel alive with purpose again when you awaken your dormant strength, step into your power with a sense of peace, and discover a new wave of hope with the right tools and support. Martine and her guests are here shining their lights today through empowering stories of hardship and transformation to inspire you to find hope and to see that there is a beautiful blue ocean of serenity, happiness, and fulfillment in your future. Transformation with Martine starts now.
Transformation with Martine. This is where we overcome everything and compromise nothing. For those of you that are new to the show, my show is live every Friday at 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific. And we do welcome call-ins. If anybody wants to call in and ask my guest a question or myself, 800-930-2819. And and also, for those of you who don't know as well, my show is about hope. The guests that I invite on my show have transformational stories of overcoming, and we all believe that we as humans, we can get back up from anything. And my guest today, she is a second time around girl here. Her first show was on 9/17. I highly recommend you to check it out because she's got a lot of information, and we will continue with that today. She's back. She disappeared for a moment. So my guest today is April Adams. Welcome, my badass friend.
Thank you. I don't know what just happened. I got lost for a second, but here I am.
Well,
and
you're
I
back.
appreciate
You're
you
good.
having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So, even though this is your second show, do you want to introduce yourself and talk about what you do, especially because your stuff's a bit unique?
Sure. Thank you. Yes. So I am April Adams. I'm an emotional health consultant, which basically just means that I show people tools that they can use to find emotional peace about things. So any kind of triggers, fears, limiting beliefs, all of those kinds of things that hold us back in life and hold us back emotionally, there are subconscious tools that you can use to undo those things so that you can easily just move on without necessarily having to constantly practice mindfulness or willpower and try to force yourself into a certain way. That once your subconscious mind is on board, you're able to just move past things much more easily without having to practice all of that constantly. So I show people the ways to basically achieve that so that you can be at peace more effortlessly in general.
Yeah, I love it. I have to say, though, when I started, it was just, not only did it feel weird, but just listening to, well, I will talk about the Destroyer tracks, which you can explain that a little bit better, but just listening to it at first, just like brought up another whole thing of like, okay, I don't like this. I want this dude to be quiet so that I can just concentrate, and I don't get it. And then it's just like, kind of like, there'd be words I'd pick up that I was hearing, and I'm like, oh, okay, that's good. That's a good thing to be telling my subconscious mind. So could you explain a little bit more about the tracks, especially the Destroyer ones? And well, just that sometimes when you start in this work, it just doesn't feel amazing.
Right. Well, it's not like meditation or Reiki or something like that where you walk out feeling blissed out and it's relaxing the whole way through. There's a lot going on because these audio tracks are basically a collection of every proven brain retraining modality into one method. So there's a lot of layers there, and there's a lot going on during the track. So when you first start doing it, it is overwhelming, and it's kind of designed to be overwhelming,
Mhm.
in part so that your negative feelings can really come to the forefront and be accessible so that they can be healed. So it just
Mhm.
adds to it. But you can actually use the track to freak out about not liking that aspect of it or whatever
Yeah.
you don't like about it in order to be able to remove that reactivity to it and make it easier to do the process.
Right.
But as far as the tools themselves go, it's not a super relaxing thing to do in the beginning. But once you really get
Mhm.
the hang of it, it just starts to flow and it starts to work more quickly on you. It starts
Mhm.
to feel easier. Your brain starts to cooperate and showing you root memories and things associated with it so you can get
Yeah.
faster clearance. So yes, in the beginning, it's a little bit jarring. There's somebody talking at you the entire time in a very commanding tone, and there's
Mhm.
all of these things you have to be doing throughout the track, and you're thinking about something that's bothering you. And so there's a lot coming at you, and most people do feel a little bit taken aback, and especially those of us who have been doing more relaxing techniques to
Mhm.
try to remove stress.
Yeah.
Instead, throwing yourself knee deep into the stress can be a little bit, disconcerting at first as
It
well.
can. Right. It really can. But the thing is, though, and like I've shared with you before, that sometimes when I'm in something, and usually for me, if I get stressed out, it's because I've taken too much on.
Right.
And I prefer at this point in my life, I'm almost done with kids, that kind of thing. Um, if I make my plate too full, I really start wigging out. Like, oh my God, I gotta get this. So many things. Even last night, right before I had a meeting, it's scheduled at 6:30 p.m. And 15 minutes before, I'm like, oh, I gotta finish this and I gotta finish this. And I ended up like breaking some dishes and I'm like, oh God, and this whole crazy thing. And I'm like, oh my God, if you could just relax and remember that you don't need to do all these things, right? And that there always is a tool. Because, yeah, it feels weird at first, but it's just like a meditation. Afterwards, you feel
Right.
free, literally.
Yes. Exactly. Yeah, and it's not even that you feel more light or floaty or anything like
Mhm.
that. It's literally whatever the negative thing you were feeling or thinking about just doesn't
Mhm.
matter anymore.
Yeah,
That's the freedom that you get there. It's just kind of like, why the heck was I so concerned about that?
yeah,
Okay, let me move on with my day. So that's kind of the
yeah.
feeling you get afterward.
And that's just it. It's freedom,
Right.
right? It's freedom to go
Yes.
out on to other things. It's freedom to think better thoughts.
Yeah, and it gives you more bandwidth to be able to handle
Mhm.
things.
Yes, for sure. So because this is our second show, but maybe if someone hasn't seen it, I invite everybody. 917 was the first show, so you can learn even more about these techniques. However, what brought you there? Just a
Oh,
refresher on that.
boy, yeah. So for me, I mean, just in general, I was kind of a miserable, controlling person
Mhm.
and had really high expectations of everyone in my life,
Mhm.
including myself, but
Mhm.
most especially in my relationships.
Yeah.
So whenever the honeymoon phase would come to an end, it was the end of the world, and I would try to change my partner and try to get it
Mhm.
back and try to control things. And I eventually realized that was an issue inside of me, set out
Mhm.
to heal that, and kind of took a whole healing journey. I mean, I went to therapy and
Mhm.
I did all of the techniques, reading self help books and doing spiritual practices and learning
Yep.
Reiki and becoming a healer along the
Mhm.
way in
Yeah.
all of that. As I was attempting to heal myself, I was learning things and sharing and passing those on.
Mhm.
And I would say that my journey sped up a little bit more, that the healing began to happen a little bit faster as I started to encounter other subconscious healing techniques.
Mhm.
So,
Mhm.
as I was learning hypnosis and doing EFT and
Mhm.
receiving EMDR treatments and things like that, I was
Yeah.
noticing some shifts happening, but it was still kind of slow. It still seemed like I had to do it repeatedly on the same thing over and over
Mhm.
before I was finally able to get relief. Where when I found the Orpheus tools, I was able to get much faster clearance on things, especially if I was addressing them at their root, like looking for what was the origin point of that
Right.
particular feeling or trigger. So once I got these tools, it was just boom, 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 like super fast. Where
Mm-hmm.
typically we're only able to work on maybe one thing at a time, and we have to work on it over and over and over and over again. But with these kinds of tools, it's as though, I mean, sometimes you may have to hit it a few times before it's completely clear, but it tends to happen much more quickly and easily than it does with the other methods and modalities. So
Mm-hmm.
I was not only being able to clear some of my biggest stuff, but
Mm-hmm.
then able to address all of the other little stupid piddly things that were bothering me as well, that most
Right.
people don't ever get a chance to even work on because it takes so much time to work on things. But when it takes
Right.
less time and effort to work on things, you can really kind of give yourself a whole life overhaul and a whole attitude overhaul.
Yeah, in a relatively short period of time.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So, well, for someone who is starting with this work, how do you know when to start? Is it just because like you realize in yourself that you were controlling all your relationships? Or I think for me, I was just fed up with certain areas of my life when I reached out to you. Like, I don't want to be afraid of so much. I
Right.
don't want to still, well, to be vulnerable, worry about my diet so much, these kind of things. I don't want to worry.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, that's a pretty common thing is
Yeah.
just, people realizing I'm stressing too much over things that
Mhm.
I know I shouldn't be stressing over. So how
Yeah.
can I stop doing that?
Hmm.
And that's, this work is perfect for those kinds of things. But honestly, for anybody, it takes getting to a place where you say, I can't live like this anymore.
Hmm.
And for
Hmm.
everybody, that's a different level. For some people, it's, has to be end of the world. They're practically ready to end it, where some people have a lower pain threshold and start to realize I can't live like this sooner than that. But
Yeah.
honestly, everybody that I've ever seen come to doing not only this work, but doing the work in general,
Hmm.
is in that place of I can't continue to go on the way that I have. So something has to change. And that's where you really start, doing that work.
Yeah, because it's like you almost not not only can't stand some of the people around you, you really can't stand yourself.
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's
That's where
it's
I
always
was at.
us ruining our own lives. So,
Yeah.
we're the ones that need to change if we want our lives to be any different.
Yeah. Because nobody else, like, we've talked about, you're not going to fix anybody else. You're not going to change anybody else.
Yeah.
But if you start feeling better about yourself on a whole, things seem to shift. And that's like an energetic shift for the whole room or for the
Right.
whole house, right?
Yeah. It's ridiculous how much you can change the things around you by
Mhm.
changing your reactions, your outlook, your energy around a situation.
Yeah. So speaking of that, we should talk about both of us being empaths and so many of the people that not only that you work with, but I work with, because it's more challenging even for us because of other people's energies, taking on other people's energies. So I'd like to go into that as when we get back from a break. But before then, where can everybody find you?
Oh, okay. So I am on Instagram as April
Mhm.
Adams Emotion Coach. And I
Mhm.
also have a website, apriladams.org. And you'll be sharing the link to the
Yes,
page with, some freebies and stuff on there too. So that's a direct link that people can access through you.
absolutely. Yes, that is all being shared. Um, and they can find tools as well on your
Yes.
website and everything too, right?
Right.
So
Yes.
that
So
way, yeah,
I
sorry.
have some meditations on there that we'll actually probably talk about as we get into the empath stuff.
Hmm. Hmm.
But also, I have a tutorial as to how to find the Orpheus tools that we've been talking
Hmm.
about for subconscious
Hmm.
work
Yeah.
and how to use it, how to get the best results with it, and how to kind of get started using those tools yourself.
Yeah. It's very good, everyone. It's very, very good. Very helpful. So we are going to take a short break, and we'll come back and talk about empaths and how the work can really impact us overall, plus being able to, for those of us that might be in the world of self-development, helping others with coaching, etc., getting yourself right is a game changer out into the world of your service as well.
Yes.
So thank you, everyone. We'll be right back. Everyone to Transformation with Martine, where we overcome everything and compromise nothing. My amazing guest today is April Adams, and she just got techniques and an air about her when she coaches. She's very intuitive. She's very calm. She makes you feel peaceful, and she's got amazing tools to share with you. So when we went to go on break, before going on break, we were talking about empaths. And, I was thinking, April, maybe people don't even know what that is if they're not one.
Yep. Yeah. Well, good place to start. And I mean, honestly, a lot of empaths don't even know that they're empaths. So it would be a good place to start.
Yeah.
So an empath is essentially somebody who is constantly feeling everybody else's stuff. So you might be feeling how they're feeling at the time. You might be feeling their physical pain. So a way that you might know that's happening is if you're suddenly experiencing an ache or pain that doesn't make sense to your physical experience at that moment, or you're feeling an emotion that doesn't make sense to your experience at that time.
Right.
That's typically showing you are picking that up from someone else. But what most empaths in general, even people who've read a lot about it or are doing all of these practices to try to put a bubble around themselves or protect themselves from other people's energies, are that it's actually us tuning into other people's energies, where normally it feels like other people are putting their stuff on us. And it just seems like the world is out there barfing their nonsense all over, and we're just being inundated with it. Where it usually begins is that as children, we will have somebody in our life who is emotionally unstable. And we don't really know where we stand moment to moment or how we should behave. And so we're constantly on guard. And we unconsciously start to put our feelers up to go like, how's mommy feeling today? Is daddy feeling angry right now? So that we know how to behave, how to protect ourselves. We know if we need to stay out of the way or if we can be our little flamboyant self at the time. Right. And it just becomes such a great way to protect ourselves. We then start doing it everywhere with everyone, and we're constantly tuning into everyone around us, or even we start to think about somebody who maybe states away from us, and we're immediately feeling how they're feeling. It's just amazing how capable we are of tuning into other people and what's going on internally with them without even realizing that we're doing it.
Right.
So we then have to take responsibility for the fact that we're doing that and understand that that isn't disempowering. That's actually really empowering to know I have control over which energies I'm going to pick up on, which energies I'm going to tune into. And so you can energetically mind your own business. The process that I usually see with this, like what I picture is I imagine that my feelers, my energy is like an octopus, and there's like tentacles reaching out to this person or this person or this person, and I pull them in. So I just envision pulling in those tentacles so that all my energy is here within a couple of feet of my body, and I'm not connecting to anybody else or anything, and I'm just paying attention to me right here, right now in this space. And in the beginning, you often have to do that several times a day. Sometimes you even have to do it several times a minute, because it becomes such an unconscious thing that you find yourself doing it without even thinking about it. And then, oh, okay, I'm feeling their stuff again. Let me reel it in. Let me, pull in those tentacles again. So it just like any other mindfulness practice, is beneficial, but can also be quite exhausting to have
Mhm.
to stay on top of all the time. Just as exhausting as having to keep an energy bubble around you of,
Mhm.
protecting yourself.
Right.
Um, but a little bit more empowering than that, in that you're recognizing this isn't other people putting their stuff on me. This is me checking in with them. So let me mindfully stop doing that.
Mhm.
And so I did that for a while. And still occasionally, if I notice something that I'm picking up on that doesn't feel right, I'll do it mindfully. Or
Yeah.
at the end of a day with clients, I'll just kind of, as a hygiene thing, kind of
Yeah.
pull it in, ground myself, kind of cut cords with everybody and send their energy out into the sun, so I'm not carrying their stuff with me the rest of the day or night.
Yeah.
But I realized over time, as I was tapping into my intuition more and more, as I was doing channeled messages, I was shown that we as empaths have these amazing capabilities to automatically shift negative energy into positive.
Mhm.
So I see it like an air purifier or like trees. So, you know how we breathe out, and what we breathe out is toxic to us. And if we were to continue trying to breathe that, it would not be good for us. But
Right.
oxygen is very good for us. Trees take in what we breathe out and turn it into oxygen. And that doesn't deplete them. They don't feel that as toxic. They don't experience that as any
Mhm.
kind of drag on them whatsoever. And in fact, it's part of the cycle of life. We can do that energetically as empaths, but we have to be able to tap into our own inner power and our own higher self to be able to activate that capability.
Mhm.
So, I talked about that there are meditations that come with this.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
on the page that you'll have as a link, uh, there are 3 meditations for empaths, and one is just kind of powering you back up and recharging you after feeling like your batteries have been drained. But the next 2 are very much about connecting with your higher self, fully
Mhm.
grounding, getting very familiar with how it feels to be completely embodied within yourself and your higher self embodied within your physical being, and then using that to create this Merkaba symbol. So it's like the 6-pointed star with a circle around it.
Mhm.
And it sort of forms here, like they say, the seat of the soul is just below your heart. It's kind of
Mhm.
where this is forming.
Yeah.
And as you begin to envision that, you can see it growing and growing and growing and growing until it's kind of like a hamster ball around you.
Yes.
And then any kind of negative energy that you encounter, you are automatically transforming into positive energy,
Mm.
into a higher
Nice.
frequency. And that
Mhm.
doesn't deplete you, it doesn't run you down. And if anything, it actually makes you feel great. So I notice when I do this, like I start
Yeah.
to get really kind of revved up and pepped up and feeling way better. And I'll sometimes still do this when I'm in a session with a client who's really going through something
Mhm.
difficult and emotional. And even though we're on the computer, when I'm meeting with people, because I'm so close to the computer and I'm connecting with them, it's like we're
Yeah.
in each other's energy fields in those
Right. For
moments.
sure.
So I can start running that to help sort of transform the energy a little bit, make it easier for them to process whatever's
Mhm.
going on as we go through our session.
Right.
So those can be wonderful, empowering, feel good ways
Mhm.
to protect yourself as an empath. But I still found it a little bit exhausting to have to always remember to do those
Right.
things and have to be on
Gotcha.
my guard all the time. So, as I started doing the subconscious work on myself, especially with the Orpheus tools that I have the tutorial for that you guys can look
Mhm.
at,
Yeah.
the more work I have done on myself on the subconscious level, the less I pick up on other people's stuff without intending to.
Mhm.
Because as you do the work on yourself, you stop resonating with certain triggers and certain problems and certain fears.
Good point. Yes.
And when we are interacting with somebody else as an empath, we're standing there with our frequency and they come in with their frequency and they could be jangling all over the place. Maybe they're anxious about something and, you might have been fine. But if you have anxiousness around a certain thing, or, around a similar thing, or you have, a lot of things in general that you tend to kind of get worked up about yourself,
Right.
they come into your field with their jangliness and you start to match it.
Yes.
But if you've worked through the majority of the things that make you feel jangly and they come in with their jangly energy, you may be able to perceive it a little bit. It may feel like something is weird or off a little, but you're not going to take it on and suddenly start jangling along with them.
Right.
So the more things you work on and heal for yourself, the less likely you are to be suddenly overtaken by what's going on with the person that you're interacting with.
Mm-hmm.
Now, a lot of empaths are like, but that's my gift. That's, something that I've developed. And okay, it's been a great protective mechanism. It does have some benefits, but it is also depleting the hell out of you and running you down. And it can be very frustrating and draining. So I have found myself that I am still able to tune into people when I choose to, but it doesn't just autopilot happen all the time. So I can choose, do I want to tune into this person so that I know what needs to be healed, how they're feeling, what they're going through, but I can also mind my own business without even having to try.
Right.
Where before it was an effort, it was a practice I had to do. I had to pull in those tentacles or I had to turn on that field. But now I get to decide, do I want to feel what they're feeling? Do I want to tune in and see what's going on there? Or am I just going to go on with my life and just kind of continue minding my own business, but on autopilot instead of it having to be an effort?
Yeah. So it's just like you're choosing what to do. Maybe you're going to do that like you have with me in a session or something. You'll put yourself there with me to kind of be feeling things, but you're deciding to do that. Right. Whereas in your everyday life, you may choose to not tune in at all. And that's a really good thing, because all three of my kids are empaths, and one of them, my youngest is 17. So I'm trying to teach him that you don't have to, we can go into a little bit more. We're going to go on a break again in a minute. We can go into a little bit more. One question though, before we do, is highly sensitive people the same thing as empath?
Most of the time. Yeah. It tends to overlap a lot. I think there's a slight difference in them, but for the most part, most empaths are highly sensitive people, and most highly sensitive people are empaths. Right. I think once in a while there are people who are one or the other, but.
Okay, so we are going to go on break again. And when we get back, we will talk more about, well, actually, I'd love to go into, this trips me up sometimes too. Like when you were talking about picking up on things, is it sometimes maybe not so much someone's energy, but maybe a past life of your own coming in? Maybe we could talk about that a little bit on the way.
Let's dive into that a little bit.
Okay. All right. Thank you, everyone. We'll be right back. Welcome back, everyone, to Transformation with Martine, where we overcome everything and compromise nothing. My guest today is April Adams, and we've been talking about empaths, being an empath, how to energetically disconnect through her tips, meditations, and also, subconscious tools that can be done to disentangle. And before we left on break, it was just floating through my mind when we think about disengaging from someone else as an empath. Do past lives ever come in? Like, are you picking up on them, or is there something, or maybe they were in a life with you and you're picking up on something, and how does that all work too? Like, to know what's yours and what's someone else's sometimes.
Yeah, it happens a lot where, we encounter people that we've encountered before, and we feel, sometimes you meet somebody, you immediately are like clicking with them, and you're just like, I've known this person before. And I mean, sometimes that's because they unconsciously remind you of a parent or something. Sometimes
Yeah.
it's because you've had multiple lifetimes with that person. So, that can be difficult to determine unless you're going to do some kind of past life regression or something to really dive into those kinds of things.
Right.
But I mean, honestly, I get the question a lot. How do I know whether something is my intuition showing me I need to leave a situation or pay attention to something, or whether it's a trauma response?
Mm-hmm.
And so, same question, it's how do I know whether this is a trauma response or if this is just something that's coming up from the past life or whatever, So,
Yeah.
to me, I always try to do the work on whatever the negative feeling is that's coming up.
Mm-hmm.
So I would go to subconscious tools and freak out about whatever the feeling is or negative thoughts are that are coming up around a particular thing or person or
Mm-hmm.
situation, and then see if that feeling is still present. Because typically, once you've removed the emotional reactivity
Right.
to the issue, you can you can be much clearer about, okay, is this, it's still showing up, it's still a negative. So that means I need to physically take action on it in my life. And I can more easily do so because now I'm not all emotional about it.
Right. That totally makes sense. Totally makes sense. Um, you mentioned, oh, my mind's jumping here. What, like a parent, like coming in, like they remind you of a parent, or they something like that. Isn't it also like when you get criticized by somebody, say whether it's on social media, whether it's a friend or whatever, that doesn't feel good. But if your mom or your parent or somebody that maybe you had an abusive relationship with, or somebody that you're still trying to get approval with,
Yeah,
that really is,
it's
the tools
extra
come in
tough.
handy for that, for sure.
Right. Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, some people just get knocked down by criticism in general. And
Yeah.
so the work could absolutely help with that. And I mean,
Mhm.
honestly, that's something that we all as humans struggle with, to some extent,
Yeah.
because it's been programmed into us since the beginning
Yeah.
of time to care what other people think and try to please other people, because it was literally a matter of survival back
Mhm.
in caveman days, village days, things like that, where we had to fit in to the culture that we were in and provide some value to it, or we'd be sent out into the wilderness to try to survive on our own.
Right.
And then, we're born into our families of origin, and we see that our parents could take away our food, shelter, love, toys, whatever.
Mhm.
And we know intrinsically, I have to please this person in order to get my needs met. I have to please
Yeah.
this person in order to survive. So,
Yep.
whether you are upset because somebody criticized you, or whether you're upset because a parent criticized you,
Mhm.
it's just different degrees of the same thing. And some people are able to brush off certain ones, but not others. And it would make sense when it's our original caregivers that we have the hardest time with, just because from day one, we felt like we had to please them and be perfect and whatever in order to keep them happy, in order to get our needs met, in order to keep surviving in the way that we were.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Hmm. So what tools do you use the most on yourself? Would it be the destroyer tracks and eraser tracks, that kind of thing? Or is that always your first go-to?
Yes, that would be, my primary set of tools that I would go to and that I would recommend anybody else go to. Uh, do I occasionally use things like EFT or, mindfulness techniques and things like that? Yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely. And sometimes, I mean, I do a lot of energy work on myself
Mhm.
and in sessions, things like that. I do occasionally use traditional hypnosis if we need to do some root finding,
Yeah.
but these tools just blow everything else away because they're the combo pack. It's just like
Right.
when you take everything that's already been scientifically proven and you bring it together and you even add in some other elements that are even more powerful, why would you go to anything else? So
Right.
yeah, 9 times out of 10, I'm going to the destroyer track, the negative emotion destroyer track, to deal with any kind of negative emotional reaction. This morning I did a round on feeling overwhelmed.
Mhm.
Um, but there are also eraser tracks, which are great
Mhm.
for negative beliefs and limiting beliefs,
Mhm.
because our behaviors are driven by our beliefs. So
Mhm.
that's probably my second go-to tool. I don't use it as much as the emotional one because I
Yeah.
think most of us have more of an emotional roller coaster than, negative belief programming.
Mhm.
And typically, once people have kind of dealt with some of their core beliefs and the issues that are holding them back as far as their beliefs go, you don't need to constantly be doing belief work like you may with emotional work. That's
Right.
definitely an ongoing project for everybody.
Yeah, because there's always stuff coming up because I guess we're human, right?
Right. Yeah. It just gets to be longer and longer and longer pockets of not needing to
Yeah.
do the work. The more work you do on
Right.
yourself, the longer periods of time you experience peace for. And so,
Right.
the bad times get shorter and less intense, the good times get longer and stronger. And
Mhm.
that's really what it's all about, doing the work
Right. For sure.
overall, but definitely with these tools.
Yeah, yeah. So important to remember that. And for me, sometimes it's just remembering it when I'm in the throng of some bout of crazy.
Yes. Yeah. And I'd say that's probably the top issue with the majority of people. Like most of
Mhm.
my clients will say that they'll go, I love the tools. I find great relief from when I use them.
Yeah.
But in the moment when I'm up here and I'm at a level 10 about something, it's
Yeah.
not my first thought to go and grab the tools and to work through it in that moment. But part of the process when people work with me is I recommend doing, you know,
Mhm.
at least 1 to 3 rounds a day to make it a part of your regular day
Right.
so that it becomes your go-to, because most of us have some kind of typical coping mechanism we would go to distract ourselves from our feelings, whether that's going to eat or drink or
Mhm.
take drugs or get on
Yep.
social media. We normally have some escape from, what we're feeling. We try to just tamp it down, and so most people are just going to go to whatever their typical thing is,
Mhm.
unless they've reprogrammed themselves to go to these set of tools whenever something is coming up so that they can just move on instead of having to keep suppressing it and talking themselves out of it.
Right. Right. Do you like ask yourself like what is your body trying to tell you? What is your soul trying to tell you in this? Or do you just go and hit it right away?
Typically, I just go right to it.
Okay.
I mean, I definitely found those kinds of techniques beneficial prior to using these tools.
Mhm.
But at this point, the only question I ask is, when have I experienced something like that in the past? Because
Mhm. Mhm.
whatever we're reacting to right now, it's because our subconscious has been recording everything that's ever happened to us. It's been constantly scanning for what could go wrong, what could hurt me, what could get me, what's waiting around the
Mhm.
corner to attack me.
Right.
And anytime it sees something negative now that reminds it of something bad that has happened in the past, we're going to start having negative feelings. So
Yeah.
we have to not only deal with what's in front of us right now, what are we freaking out about that's right here, but also
Mhm.
look at, when have I experienced something like that before, and
Right.
acknowledging both of those things while you do this work instead of only one or the other, because then you're able to use the feelings of the current trigger and the
Mhm.
memory of the past event to basically detach that synaptic bond in your brain between the trigger and the emotion that comes up whenever you notice something like that trigger coming up.
Right. Yeah, that totally makes sense. Totally makes sense. So have you thought about writing a book about all this good stuff?
Well, I've already written a couple of books, but that was about 5 years ago. And at this
Yeah.
point, I don't even feel like I have time to write a book.
Right.
I,
Right.
I've got a lot going on right now. But it's a possibility down the road,
Uh-huh.
just not currently on it right now.
Yeah. So that's not your mission right now. That's not your mission this
Right.
year. Do you want to share your books though, to, for the audience?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. So they're on Amazon. And the first one is Essence, Ending Emptiness, Finding Fulfillment. It's really
Okay.
great for empaths. So empaths would
Mhm.
love this book. It talks more in depth about what we talked about, where the empathic abilities
Yeah.
come from, and also talks about developing your own intuitive abilities, your own healing abilities, and connecting more with your truer self. So it's like spirituality, metaphysics, and self-help 101. It was everything
Yeah.
I learned in like the first 5 or 6 years of my
Mhm.
own journey prior to really jumping in headfirst into the subconscious work.
Mhm.
The second book came out within a year of the first one. It was just like
Mhm.
everything was coming at once.
Yeah.
I was channeling messages in 2015. And the premise, the book is called Less Logic, More Wisdom, Surviving the Shift with Your Sanity Intact.
Mm,
So it's a collection of channeled
that's
messages
good.
to help us figure out and understand why it looks like the world is going to hell in a handbasket and how to stay sane while that's happening. And the
Yeah.
major understanding was that all of this negative stuff that's appearing to happen in the world is happening
Mhm.
for a reason, and that it's going to create change. And it's like things have to get horrible. Like we have to hit a rock bottom before we're willing to change. The world has to hit a rock bottom
Right.
before it's willing to change. So that's really what that book is all about. And then there's guided meditations that help you sort of process all of that and move through, your feelings and reactions as the process goes on, with the shift and all of the crazy changes that are happening in the world.
Right on. I fully understand that. Um, so do we want to take a quick break, April, or should we just keep going?
Whatever you'd like. I'm open to whatever you'd like to do.
Okay. I think what would be, we've hit a little bit on it before, but what might really hit people is the unmet expectations, because you're so
Mm.
good with that, of speaking about it. And not just, it's not even just relationships, but success. It's like I've had a lot of fears, just like, my gosh, I'm getting older, am I ever really going to hit the level of success I
Mm.
want? And I could spin out on that on me. It's like it's no blame for anybody else but myself, and getting in my own way.
Right.
So
Right.
what would you
Yeah.
advise somebody like me in that, but also just getting to a level of where they want to be, and not being not only so hard on themselves, but the people around them?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So have you heard of Danielle Laporte's book, The
Yep,
Desire Map?
absolutely.
And her whole premise is that if there's anything you want, any desire that you have,
Mm-hmm.
it's more about what the emotional need is that's getting met if you achieve or get that thing. So anything we want is about how we think we will feel if we get that.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the important piece to look at. Anytime we want anything across the board in our romantic relationships, if we want to have a
Mm-hmm.
baby, if we want work success,
Yeah.
how are you going to feel if you achieve what you want to achieve?
Right.
What
Good
is
point.
that success going to make you feel about yourself or about the world or about where you've gotten to?
Mm-hmm.
And so looking at, does it make you feel validated? Does it make you feel special? Does it make you feel like your parents are finally going to be proud of you?
Mm-hmm.
So with getting pregnant or having a baby, and people hate it when I say this, but most of the time it's not about the baby.
Mm-hmm.
It's about making your parents proud, or getting unconditional love, or fitting in with people around you, or fulfilling what you're supposed to do. It's rarely about the baby.
Mm. Yeah,
And
that would trigger
so,
some people.
yes, right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's just about like the codependency of needing someone who is going to depend on you. And so yeah, it's a non-issue as long as you're, raising your child in a healthy way and able
Mhm.
to have children.
Yes.
But when people get to this place of infertility and they're devastated
Mhm.
by the inability to have children, it would be really healing to look at, what is it I want out of this? What emotional need
Right.
would it meet for me to have a child, and heal the lack of getting that need met throughout your life.
Mhm.
So to take the whole desire map thing a step further, of understanding when we have a strong desire for something and we want a particular emotional need to be met,
Uh-huh.
normally what we're trying to do is get needs met that have not consistently been met throughout our
Mhm.
lives, especially in childhood.
Mhm.
So if you think about having, feeling validated, and that's the thing that you want most in the world, well, then looking at your childhood, go, well, were you validated by your parents?
Right.
Did they see you? Did they hear you? Or did they dismiss your feelings, ignore you, neglect you, put you down all the
Mhm.
time? So, of course, you would want to be validated and
Yeah.
look for getting that anywhere that you could.
Mhm.
So, that's the major thing to look at in a relationship when you're not happy. Well, what is it you want from your partner? What emotional need would that meet? And
Mhm.
when has that need not been met for you throughout the course of your life, going back as young as possible?
Mhm.
And if you want something at work, what is it you want? What's the emotional need that that's meeting for you? And
Mhm.
were your parents able to meet that for you? Did your romantic partners meet that for you? You know, or has that been a perpetual sense of lack in your
Mhm.
life?
Right.
And then doing the
Right.
subconscious work, typically the negative emotion destroyer track,
Mhm.
while you have a fit about how tired you are of not getting that need met in your life.
Right. Right. Yeah, there's been like a couple things that I've been working on that one of my guests a few weeks back pointed out, and he was actually on a break. He's like, how did that feel? And it's like, I didn't think about it. It's almost the kind of the same as when I had a boss that we did meditation every day. It was really unique in a law firm. And one of his colleagues, we had gone to a restaurant. He used to take us to these fancy lunches and everything. And I remember him asking me if I forgave my dad. And I said, oh, yeah, I forgave him. Didn't realize the back and forth in my head. They're like, no, I did not, kind of thing. And it was almost the same that this other coach had to like pull that out. I wasn't even thinking about it because that's what I'm used to when it comes to my dad. And he had asked me, or my dad asked me the other day, he said, so how's business this year? And I said, I really took on some amazing major strides, but this year, unlike every other year in business, I've always made more money. This year, not. But I've really made some big strides. And he goes, well, good thing you got a husband then. And it was just like, ooh, man, that's been sitting with me. So I think the whole thing about success for me right now is it is weighing in on my dad. Like, yeah, I want him proud of me. Regardless of how bad our relationship was, it's not so bad now. It's
Mm-hmm.
still that trying to get his approval of me
Right.
or shining in his eyes.
Yes. Yeah. And that's across the board. We're
Mm-hmm.
all, I mean, my father is in his 60s, and when his father passed,
Mm-hmm.
he was still concerned whether his father had been proud of him or not.
Yeah.
That was what he was most worried about after losing his father. So
Mm-hmm.
it's amazing how much that sticks with us and how
It
important that can
is.
be for
It
us
is.
throughout our lives.
Yeah,
So
regardless of the relationship.
yeah, yeah. I mean, so I think what I would do is, use the destroyer track, to
Yeah.
have an angry fit at
Mm-hmm.
your father and tell him off
Yeah.
for all the ways he's treated you like that.
Yeah.
And I'm sure it goes back really young, but
Mm-hmm.
also to feel the pain of not having him act proud of you, not
Yeah.
having him show you that he's proud of you or understands where you're coming from or your success and things like that. And just the theme of feeling like you're not enough or that he's not proud of you throughout the course of your life. And that should help bring a lot more ease to that situation.
For sure. Because I remember like looking at the numbers at first and was like, oh, a little disappointed, but not so much, because I've made so many strides this year that I was like keeping track more of my good stuff than I was my, it's just like that kind of sent me on a journey that I need to work on and still work on.
Right.
So April, well, not only how can people access you, find you again, and what do you want to leave us with today? Like even one of the most important things that you've learned in your journey.
Sure. Yeah. So you can find me at apriladams.org and on Instagram as April Adams Emotion Coach. And of course, my top message is always, if you want long-term fast relief from anything, especially emotional, you have to deal with it on the subconscious level.
Yes.
And to understand that anytime you are struggling emotionally in whatever situation, it's you who is needing to do the work, unless there's toxicity or abuse, and then get out. But
for sure,
if you are going over and over and over something in your mind, that is something within you that can be healed and moved on from, so that you can create better work situations and relationships and be able to move through life in more peace.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I bet it changed your whole marriage.
Absolutely. 100%. Yeah. I mean, it once I was able to let go of the pressure of how I thought it should be, things became much more playful and easygoing overall without even having to talk about it. It was just a shift in me of my expectations and pain around the situation. It took all the pressure off, and then we could be us again.
That's awesome. That's so beautiful. Thank you so much for coming back. I so appreciate you and your work. And everyone, please check her out at apriladams.org. And we have a link for you. And check out her books on Amazon as well. And we'll be back next week at 1 p.m. or every Friday, 1 p.m. Eastern and 10 a.m. Pacific. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you for listening to Transformation with Martine. Did listening today spark a sense of hope and possibility? Hold on to this feeling and tune in every second and fourth Friday at 10 a.m. Pacific for more inspiring conversations with Martine and her guests. They will show you there is hope, and you are right where you need to be. Martine is dedicated to supporting you right where you are while launching you towards promise, passion, and possibility that leads to the fulfilled life your heart aches for. If you're tired of being stuck, schedule a complimentary consultation with Martine and get on the exciting path towards the life you want to be living. Visit martineemmons.com and make your appointment today.